Resistance is Futile, of course, the album. It certainly couldn't have been called Persistence is Futile because 31 years, 13 albums. It's an amazing achievement.
It is pretty staggering. You know, I think we're the oldest surviving band on our record label, Columbia, bar Bruce Springsteen. So that puts it in some...
Sade as well.
Yeah, but Sade's done about 4 albums.
That's true. Hardly prolific, to be fair, Sade. Whereas you guys have been. I mean, that 10 months between Rewind the Film and Futurology, what did that do to you physically and mentally?
Certainly, from a lyric writing perspective, it did empty me somewhat, you know, because they were both quite high concept. One was very sort of confessional, staring in the mirror, and the other one was this idea of connecting Europe through art, esoteric art movements. And it would, you know, lyric writing is harder than writing music in the sense that to sound fresh,
awkward,
to sound fresh and you know, to stimulate is just, you know, there's always room on a guitar to stimulate, but lyrics are so important to the band. I think I had to sort of reboot myself.
Well, as a BBC presenter, I have to give a right of reply to James Dean Bradfield after that outrageous undermining of his entire creative.
Well,
output.
number one, I want a hard copy of that quote. There's always room to express yourself in a guitar solo.
Just ask Joe Satriani.
I'll have that piped through the studio forever now. I think he's right, probably. Kind of like it's because you can repeat yourself musically and kind of get away with it. You know, even if it's just a bridge or just like a little passage in music, but it kind of, if you keep returning to certain words and lyrics, you kind of like, you know, they just tug at your ear straight away. And also there is an investigative kind of like raking of the emotional coals that you go through with writing lyrics, which is tough. You know, I've tried to write a couple in my time and it's hard, I think.
Did you have to just wait for Nicky to refill his tanks, as it were?
Yeah,
or
I think the band does. Yeah, and it was always the same when it was, you know, when it was Nick and Richie writing together. And there's been so much, you know, obviously, you know, now it's just, you know, Nick writing the lyrics. All the onus is on him, mostly 99% of the time. And, you know, the traditional kind of like a routine in the band is just I nag for lyrics all the time. I nag and I nag and I nag and I nag because I can't write music without lyrics in front of me mostly. So I need them to inspire the music.
And how do you deal with that kind of pressure, Nicky?
Time to shut up. Look, we've been in school since we were 4. There's very little ego between the three of us. We've all been in the same school. We've been in the band. You know, it's a lifetime of joy and misery to reflect upon. And it's not that I ever want to, it's not that I don't want to give Jim's lyrics, but I know if they're average, then it tends to kind of inform
The music.
average music.
Yeah.
You know, so we've always been obsessed with titles, with words, with visual ideas and music. They all have to be right for us to get that goosebump moment where we still feel we have a relevance, you know, to ourselves and to the outside world, I think.
And you have maintained that relevancy, but it is something that's difficult. Elton John was on the show last week and he was talking about this album that he's just brought out, which has got some really interesting covers on it, Queens of the Stone Age and etc. And he was just saying how, you know, he doesn't get played at radio anymore.
No.
And he knows that his market is not a streaming market, for instance. What about those thoughts? Do they go through your head?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we're lucky that radio has really embraced the album. So, you know.
Well, they did with Futurology as well.
Yeah, I know. So I can't tell you what a thrill it is to still hear ourselves on the radio. It's massive for us. You know, it's the moment of conception, you know, that, yes.
It still feels, it's still the biggest thrill you get when you hear the first single go out there on the radio. It is, you know. We do consider ourselves to be a great radio band. But kind of, you know, there wasn't much humility in that statement, but we do. We think we're a band that's designed to be on the radio. We always were. And if that ends, then that would be a massive, you know, crestfallen kind of moment for us, definitely. But we can definitely have empathy with what Elton said about, you know, you start questioning, are we a streaming band? I know it seems like a strange sentence, but it is something you confront yourself with.
And for someone with Elton's catalogue and, you know, just he's managed, I do think he's managed to do it, man, because he's just still so on it. He's so engaged with culture and music, you know, and it is interesting, this album of sort of reworks of his songs and the guests he's got on there. I mean, he sang on Alice in Chains record.
He did, yeah.
I mean, that's got to be the maddest thing ever.
And he's done a really good job of reminding people down the years that kind of he is a real musician. That he did a lot of touring before. He was Elton John, just backing up, kind of musicians, legendary musicians that came from America. And he was in the pickup band for years and years and years and years. And he's never stopped gigging,
Resistance is Futile. Is that you saying it to us? Is it us saying it to you? Or is it the powers that be saying it to all of us?
I think it is multi-layered. It's all those things. The idea was, I'm obsessed with titles, and I just wanted to set something that kind of illustrated that mixture of defiance of us as the old school last gang in town, mixed with the resignation and melancholia, knowing that perhaps it doesn't even matter anymore. Because I think that's what you face every day when you've been around as long as we have. It's still in us, in our DNA, and the raging against the dying of the light is there. But we kind of, as James was saying, it's making sure that people are still listening. You don't want to be just screaming into a void. And so that kind of theme runs through the record.
I liked it because the initials spelled riff with one F. Said the thick musician.
Resistance is futile, fools. And then you would have had riff, but the fools bit would have been a bit Mr. T. Probably not in keeping with your would not been keeping with your vibe. It has to be said.
But there was one point when the album really, there's a quote by Phil Ochs, which is the American folk sing, in such ugly times, the only true protest is through beauty, to paraphrase him. And that, as much as anything, set us off on the path lyrically on the record.
Because I don't know your personal lives, but I'm sure they're fine. But your professional lives, even though I'm sure I read a quote somewhere that people have to make sacrifices around you if you're in bands, and especially in bands because it's your priority. It's all encompassing. It's very hard. I've always thought this with bands to tell people that love you that there's something that you love more than you love them, and that's music.
I think it's a hard balancing act to survive like we have with families and young kids and all that. It does become incredibly complicated because the dedication needed to keep the band going and relevant is
what splits most bands up.
Yeah, it's so all-consuming.
Just that thing of sometimes you start writing for a record and you don't get there for the first 4 songs, and then perhaps somebody's got problems in one family where their kids have been ill for 2 months, and all those kind of all that tawdry, ordinary stuff is what splits bands up as they get older, kind of thing, because they can't find the time to be dedicated to what they do. And you've just got to really punch in the gaps. And that's not a sob story. That's just explaining what splits up most bands once they get past 40.
And drugs and money.
And drugs and money.
Which we never had a problem with.
We're fine with that. So I just think we've tried harder than most to actually punch in the gaps and just go, no, we're going to keep going. And even though it's been a pretty bad couple of months. It's been like driving a tricycle through a barrel full of molasses, as Oscar Wilde once said. We can get past this. And that's where most certain bands just give up.
So it is really easy to split up.
But if there's a darkness going on in your personal life, is the light always the fact that you can go into a studio and express that and express the pain? And I know, James, that I've read that yours tends to be more personal musically, what you bring to it.
I
think James enjoys...
Although Distant Colours isn't.
Yeah, I think James, he gets more of a thrill out of being locked in the studio than and Sean do.
Yeah, I do. I don't know.
Are you a sociopath, James? Bradfield? I like to be away from human beings.
I like this.
Good grief! To be caught in the crossfire of 2 Tottenham fans. Jesus, I can have you accuse other people of being bloody minded. Champagne football. Give me a break.
Oh, James is gunning us. He's gunning us. He's doing well.
I find it easy. I find it easy to switch off when I have a good environment. And being in a band, if you try hard enough, you get blessed with just great environments to work in, especially if you've got a studio, because you can just go there and you actually can just scream into the void for a while. As Nick said, is the useless thing to do, but you can do that, get out of your system, and then come out the other end with something more positive.
And we are completely blessed to be, there's the commitment to being in a band is can be absolute. But having said that, the results that come from it, couldn't swap for anything else.
So the melancholia can't be your career, because you're about to embark on an arena tour, first time in a long time, and that's a huge statement to make, a hugely confident. I was actually reading an interview with Scott Thomas, your agent, about this, the plan, and that's hugely invigorating. So there's no melancholia coming from a professional perspective.
No, I don't think there is. I think it's actually time has condensed so dramatically being in a band in the terms of what you've got to do, that you get less time to sit back and actually feel that. Because when we started, apart from Radio 1, The Enemy, Melody Maker, it's like, that's it, we've done it. Job done. Top of the Pops next. We're here. Now that you do spend your time doing 100 things, half of which you don't actually know what they're for.
Wow.
In the digital world,
Yes.
you know they're good and they're worthwhile.
Yeah.
But it is completely changed. And I think it's hard just to kick back sometimes and think, oh, this is great. We did the Liberty Stadium a couple of years ago. It was amazing in Swansea, doing Everything Must Go. But then it just seemed to go. The minute we came off stage, it was like, we've got to do something else.
Yeah.
That's invigorating, but also quite a trap.
It is.
It is.
You're playing catch up and you go, where's the next high going to come from?
No, yeah.
So when we work with Steve Albini, the famous American producer, but he calls himself an engineer. He just said it's the digital hiss of hysteria. He just says it's just this loud hissy noise that amounts to nothing, but which just encompasses everything and just traps everything in its hiss kind of thing. And that's what
that was 10 years ago.
That was 10 years ago, yeah.
But the thing is, you realise you have to be part of it, and you're kind of trying to navigate this bewildering forward march to nothingness, but you think, well, I've still got to try and engage with it.
Is it depressing that, and someone put this actually in one of the tweet questions, that there hasn't really been a band that's taken your mantle and run with it? If you look out there in the world of guitar music now, which, let's face it, is contracting, it seems, certainly in popularity, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Where is the Manic Street Preachers of 2018?
Well,
and you don't want a cover band, but I mean someone that believes in the ideals that you believed.
Well, there was a tribute band to us once, but they had it all wrong. The singer was like 6'2", and the bass player was like 5'6". But they were good. But kind of, you can get wrapped up in things sometimes. You think, wow, there's no real top line band that's come out that said that cite us as an influence. And kind of, Nick has always spotted that there are more lecturers influenced by us than there are musicians.
We did a sign-in in Rough Trade the other night. At least 4 people came up and said about they just got their PhD in the poetry of Philip Larkin and R.S. Thomas or whatever, they all said it was all down to us. There's a massive thrill, the amount of educators we've kind of helped.
I can't see why that would be the case if you're going to base albums on esoteric art movements from the... I can't see why that wouldn't connect with... But it does connect with massive... I mean, that's the...
Yeah,
that's the amazing part, but also the galling part of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough time for guitar bands anyway. And it's so expensive. We were lucky when we signed to Columbia way back now. You got tour support. It's like years 30 grand boys to go and tour Europe.
Yeah, tour support from the record company. Yeah.
Money to do demos, signing fees, all those things which made life. You just didn't worry so much about money. You didn't want tons of money. It wasn't like we only got paid 200 quid a month, I think, back then, which seemed like a lot.
The best moments ever was when we landed in Japan. First time we ever went to Japan in 1992.
Yeah.
The record just gave us 500 quid each. It's just like, what's
Japanese
that for?
record company.
It's to live on. We were like, I'm never going to work again.
You've got PDs.
Yes, off the record company.
£500 for like 10 days,
They did work us hard, mind.
They did work us hard, yeah. But the new bands are never going to get that experience ever again.
No.
We were lucky. So we're not, on one hand, we do realise that we were very lucky to have been in a band at that point.
Is it cyclical? Is the fact that there aren't so many guitar bands around at the moment just part fashion, it will come around again? Or do you think that there's something more fundamental than that actually for a generation, guitar bands just kind of ate themselves and they didn't connect enough? It was too derivative? Or
I think it's very easy to say that kind of the guitar music kind of like just ate itself. It just found itself in a concentric circle that just kept mirroring itself. I think most music does that, I gotta say. I mean, we convince ourselves that, one movement leads to another, and there's a very infinitesimal difference sometimes. I just think there's just more choice. It's as simple as that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there is. There's just the endless choice, perhaps. It's so confusing, and it's because there's so much choice, everyone just hops on to the next thing so quickly. But the cycle, certainly since really maybe Arctic Monkeys, there just hasn't been a guitar band that's just wiped you away.
Who just announced a new tour last week.
Yes, they have, yeah. And I like the title of the album, actually. It's sounding quite interesting. But
and Guns N' Roses.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, nice.
When Duff personally invites you.
Well, I don't know if he personally did, but he might have had a small.
Well, that's what your agent has been saying publicly in Music Week.
Well, Duff McKagan, is the definition of a dude. I mean, you might think the definition of a dude is the Great Lebowski, but it's not. It's Duff McKagan. When you meet him, it's impossible not to be charmed by him. He's such a cool, tall, low-slung guy. And if he had any hand in it, thanks. I mean, we want to sell more records than them, and then instead we end up supporting them on their victory lap. We'll settle for that.
Axl Rose, of course, is a huge hero. Do you think that you may stare at his face without knowing?
I don't know. I try.
And it get awkward.
I try.
And him.
You're trying to get us checked up.
He just looks quite different. That's all. What a guy, though. What a hero.
Yeah, man.
When it's
Okay, we'll move on. Ideologically speaking, though, the two bands are very different.
Yes.
But
when we'd grown up indie kids, and we were just absolutely obsessed with all kinds of music, and then we were looking for our rock and roll band because all the bands we loved were coming from the past, be it the Clash or the Who or the Pistols or wherever, and then all of a sudden Guns came along and they put the roll back into rock. As
Marky Smith, famous son of this area, once said, he said, there's too much rock around these days and there's not enough roll. And that's why we loved them. It absolutely sums up why they were great. They weren't a hair metal band. They were a hard rock band that managed to infuse the spirit of the Stones back into what made rock and roll great again. And there's a little misconception about them in terms of just, if you listen to something like Welcome to the Jungle or Paradise City, absolutely just brilliant lyrics. Just those two songs on their own are great lyrically. It's about a small town boy coming to the city and completely and utterly just having to find himself and feeling dehumanized, And then there's other stuff there, obviously, which is different.
Yeah, but it was just our moment. James had Public Enemy at the same time. I mean, bizarrely, we would come to London at that point, and we'd say, what's your two favourite bands? And it was Public Enemy and Guns N' Roses, and people would just think we were complete idiots.
And it wasn't a PR strapline. It was, I was obsessed with Take a Nation of Millions. I thought it was an absolute amazing record. So much more than Fear of Black Planet. Take a Nation of Millions was the peak for me,
I couldn't agree more. Loads of questions on Twitter. Which song on Resistance is Futile did you enjoy making the most? Asks The Light in Your Eyes.
Liverpool Revisited, I really enjoyed. Sean was on his way to a trek to Peru. And he just went in, and I said, "Oh, come on, just give us a few takes. It's gonna be, you're gonna nail it."
No, basically what he said was, if you kick the bucket in Peru when you were on your trek, can we just at least get a couple of drum tracks out of you?
Touching.
Esprit de corps.
And sign over the publisher.
And he just went in and nailed it in two takes, and the track came together really quickly, and just it's got an effervescence to it, which just came out really naturally, which is just probably the hardest thing to do because you overthink things as you get better in the studio.
But not difficult because the people of Liverpool themselves inspired you so much by what they achieved.
Oh, just to fight that hard over such a period of time, to have all the kind of the endless stuff thrown against them. And then when I wrote the lyric and I was walking around Liverpool, we were playing Liverpool Arena in the night, and it's just a balmy day, and a psychedelic haze of inspiration just came through me, of Echo and the Bunnymen and the Lars and Roger McGough and GBH and Scully and Brookside, just thinking about all that culture that had influenced me growing up. So all came together in a miasma of celebration.
Philip's asking, the love of Richard Nixon was a political statement about a US president and a brilliant, catchy song. Have current leaderships inspired any writing?
Love of Richard Nixon is really odd because
It's really odd.
I mean, it's about one of the most hated presidents in the history of America, and it's trying to investigate a slight sense of empathy into the few things that he did, which turned out to be quite good. Anyway, is a mad song as a first single. I think we always write what we're interested in. Anything that stimulates us on the spot tends to come out in a lyric, and sometimes that can be quite oblique, or sometimes it can be really obvious.
And then, well, with Resistance is Futile, what would you say are the most kind of overtly political songs there?
Well, I think Distant Colours, which James wrote the lyrics for, it just...
Why the sigh?
It's not overtly political.
He's great. I told you he was good.
Yeah, kind of like...
Tottenham fans.
Oh, shut up. It's not overtly political. It was because the timeline of the song was just quite long in its gestation, because we started that song at our studios in Cardiff before we got knocked down for urban regeneration and flats. And then
hopefully some of it social housing.
I doubt it.
I doubt it, yeah. And then kind of like, obviously there was the year and a half interim, or perhaps even 2 years actually, because we left that song in the vaults, got to the new studio, got the new record underway, and then we got that song back out. And in the interim period, so many successive things had happened, whether it be, Trump presidential election, whether it be Theresa May kind of like scraping through in the general election, whether it be Brexit, etc. And so all those things fed into it. And also just, I think it was just quite an awkward period where you were watching things change, in front of your eyes, whether I was travelling up the valley to see my dad, or me living in Cardiff, or the studio getting knocked down. Everything just seemed to become a distant colour. It seemed the pace of change just became really fast in those 2.5 years when we were making the record. Everything just seemed to accelerate.
So did you need, did you need them? Because I started at 5 Live just at the end of 2016, and then suddenly the whole world and it seems so overwhelming.
Yes.
It does. It's the only word to describe it. Yeah, it is. Because you actually, everything just seems intractable. And you know that if you're going to ask certain questions, you're just going to say, I don't know. You don't know the answer anymore. Because in the past, you thought you could have an opinion, and that can pass for thinking that you know. But if you haven't got an opinion anymore, then you're kind of lost.
If music brings people together as it does, do you think your music is bridge building? Or do you think there is an element that it could become an echo chamber because people who are drawn to your music will be of a particular opinion?
It's a really strange one, because we have walked some very odd lines over over the 13 records. We're a very awkward band. To get a #1 record all across Europe with If You Tolerate This, Your Children Will Be Next, about the Spanish Civil War. Something like that's never going to happen again. It's just no one's going to write a lyric like that and actually infiltrate the entire music buying public of Europe. I just cannot see that happening again. And I think
unless you do it.
Well, even if we did it, it needs to come from youth. It needs to come from a perspective slightly different to ours, because we'd have to write something so unbelievably amazing that, because you just get, as you get older, you just get tired with something slightly different. And it's got to come from young people. They're the ones with the absolute energy and that reckless kind of righteous anger, You got
to have that sense of just being indestructible.
Yeah.
You've got enough to be angry about.
No. But
well, yeah, we have, but we haven't got that sense of being indestructible anymore. When you're young, it wasn't just about asking questions, it was about giving answers. And we do find it hard to have an answer now, because we've seen everything fail. We've seen communism fail. We've seen neoliberalism fail. We've seen the far right, obviously, thank God, fail. We've just seen so much political failure that it is hard to nail your mass to anything.
And you talked about the echo chamber, it's like, I remember seeing him in the Q interview, a while back, that I just thought Barack Obama saying that we find ourselves at the back of the queue if we went Brexit. thought that was just abysmal politics. Because as soon as an American president says something like that and is deemed to be a bully, that switches a lot of traditional socialists off. So we don't scream into the echo chamber, because people would never ever say against. There's certain people who won't say a thing against Obama. And I thought that was one of the biggest political missteps, it's been made in the last
just on
decade.
a political level, you just if you and I working class socialists, then
So we were very, very wary of echo chambers. But, when you say something like that, you don't want somebody coming back to you going, oh, so you don't like Obama. No, I'm just pointing out that was just a terrible, terrible
That's
political
the
mistake.
age we live in, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where you're either one tribe or another.
Yes.
And you can't just have that conversation.
I think you just hit on the head what makes it all harder, I think.
There's just the divisive nature of of this era of politics and culture in general. It's impossible to navigate through a way where you're trying to listen to both sides.
And you're trying to talk some
done.
sense.
Yeah.
And then somebody jumps on it and goes, I can't believe you said that.
Yes.
What did I say? Not that much.
Yeah.
Just become saturated with opinion, really, and rather than fact.
Can you imagine social media when you guys first started?
Oh,
Can you
we
imagine
weren't-
Nicky when Nicky was... Can you
weren't
imagine
go-
some of your conversations
Well,
taken
Richie
out of
is-
context?
Please don't.
Richie as well. Richie is probably me too. I mean, kind of like,
Not as much as me. I reread those interviews, and I know how completely out of it we were.
Don't dwell on it. But kind of
Let it go,
But
Nicky.
kind of, we wouldn't
Let it
have gone
go.
past 3-4 albums. I don't think, really, because that crushing weight would have just gone. Poof.
Alternatively, it could have gone, especially with Richie. He was such a genius, and the way he spoke and wrote, he could have actually turned it to, an amazing advantage, if you know what I mean. He could have wrestled it into his own form.